built-in closets in the bedrooms.
That is
They can have
crazy.
different sizes.
That is so crazy to me. I don't know. That's just crazy. Hi and welcome back. So, I love comparisons between Germany and the United States. And today we go into something totally interesting. The difference of German and American houses. I'm so excited to see that, and I hope you are too. But before we do that, please make sure to hit a like and a subscribe. That would help me so much. And now, you can also check out my Patreon and my channel memberships if you want to see more of me. Link is in the description. And now, let's go into the video. Okay, we have here a girl with American flag and the German flag.
Ooh, that's my favorite sitcom. Well, that's just unrealistic that the characters always just walk in through the front door. I mean, how can they open it without a key? Oh my god, now they're climbing through the air vents. Let's do that too, that's the best prank. Oh, wait. We're in Germany, we can't do that. Why, you ask? Well, because German houses and American houses are pretty different. Hallo, servus, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Felicia. I'm originally from Munich, Germany, but have been living here in Cincinnati, Ohio, on and off since 2016. Today, I'm going to take you on a little tour through German and American homes. For those of you who don't know this, the very first time I ever came to the US was in 2010, so 10 years ago, and it was for a high school exchange between the sister cities of Munich and Cincinnati. Students from different high schools were selected to participate in this, and I got very lucky, and together with one other German girl, I stayed with an American family for 2 weeks here in Cincinnati. And when you arrive in a new country where you've never been before, after such a long flight, you're totally overwhelmed by the whole situation. But I do remember that I noticed a lot of differences about the house that first night. And since then, I've discovered many more things, of course, and I've been wanting to make a video about all of the differences on houses ever since I started this channel, but for some reason I haven't yet, so here we go. I made a list of 13 things that I'll go through in this video, and of course every house and apartment is different both in Germany and the US, and people can design it however they want and install different features, but these are differences that you'll see when you compare the majority of German homes to the majority of American homes.
Doors.
Right when you enter the house, you'll notice a big difference, and that's the front door. In Germany, they're usually a lot thicker than in the US and have a seal that makes them more soundproof but also helps with insulation, and you'll find those seals at most doors inside the home as well in Germany. The front doors that
let me look. Look. Yeah, this with the seal is actually true. Just looked it right now up.
I've seen in the US so far were rather thin compared to that and never had.
Yeah, that are more like our inside the house doors. Like something like, I don't know, you can't see it. Like there is a door like just between two rooms. This is more like our inside the house doors.
Also, and this is what I've mentioned in the intro, in Germany you won't find a doorknob or handle on the outside of the front door, so even if the door is unlocked, you won't be able to open it once it's shut unless you have the key. Which brings me to...
Unless we have like a little thing that you can adjust, you just put it down in the door and then you can just push it open all the time. We call it the snapper, the schnapper, basically. And if you have the snapper then you can just push it open.
Another point, and that is that most of the locks I've seen here are a little different from the standard locks in Germany. Where I live here in the US, we have this kind of lock at the front door, but also inside on bedroom doors. The key is a little smaller and thinner than the ones in Germany, and for German locks, you usually just turn it around once or several times depending on the lock, and then just pull out the key like that. But in the US, I found that you have to turn the key back before you can pull it out. And then in Germany...
Actually, you mostly have to put it... You cannot pull it out before you open the door, because otherwise you have to do it again in Germany. You So yeah, you first have to open the door and then you can pull it out again.
There's no doorknob. You turn the key a little further and push the door open at the same time. While in the US, you can just open it like a normal door once it's unlocked. At least that's how it is for most doors. I know that for some doors in the US, you can also switch it to being locked automatically once you close it. Then after you've entered, you'll notice the next difference right away. In Germany, the first place you find yourself when you enter a house or an apartment is usually the Flur or Diele, the hallway or foyer. That's usually where you take off your shoes, which you should do in Germany, as I've mentioned in another video before, and from there you'll get to the different rooms. In the US, you enter the home right into the living room in most cases.
Really?
So like you open the door and you're...
That's crazy. Right at the door? What? Like, that's weird. I don't know. Huh?
Already in the living room. The Germans among you probably know this from American shows and movies, like if you just think of sitcoms like Full House or How I Met Your Mother.
I mean, yeah, but How I Met Your Mother also basically just is like, you know, it's like an apartment. It's not like a real home, you know? Of course, if you just have like an apartment with like basically like with roommates, yeah, then I get it. But otherwise, I don't know.
Other sitcoms, there's never a hallway. Some places do have some kind of entrance area, but it's usually more open than a German Flur. In general, German homes tend to be
again, that's crazy.
A little less open than American homes. The trend is going more towards open rooms, but traditionally the hallway is its own room pretty much, with doors to all the other rooms. Like the kitchen has its own door and is its own room, the living room is its own room, and so on. While in the US it's pretty common that the kitchen, the living room, and the dining area, if there is one, are all open and pretty much...
I mean, that's cool. It looks very nice, to be honest. It looks way nicer than the German one, let's be honest.
Big room. Now let's get to heating and cooling.
Please hit like and subscribe. It would help me so much. Thank you.
In Germany, it's very uncommon for normal houses and apartments to have air conditioning. We do have it at stores, some office buildings.
And you know, in every video that I make, I'm like, why? Why?
And definitely in our cars, but I don't think I've ever seen a German home with air conditioning. So how do we keep
that's so funny. You know, we love our air conditioning in our cars, but in our home? Are you crazy? Of course not. It's so dumb.
Place is cool. Well, first of all, it doesn't get as hot and humid in Germany as it does in a lot of parts of the US, but in the summer, temperatures do go up to around 35 degrees.
Although I also have to say, and I don't know if you know this, but I have the feeling that wherever you are in the world, like 35 degrees or something, or like 100 degrees Fahrenheit, feels different. And I don't even mean that because of the humidity, because for example, like 35 degrees in Bali when I was there, or in Thailand, where the humidity is of course way higher than in Germany, right? Felt less hard than in Germany. And I don't know why it is like that, but like the same temperature in Germany, I have nearly never had like places that feel when they are hot as like Central Europe. I don't know why, but they are hot.
Celsius. It's helpful that our walls are a lot thicker and better insulated than they are at a lot of American homes, so the heat doesn't come inside as quickly. But besides that, we just suffer and use a combined strategy of fans, opening our windows at night,
and complaining.
And we'll get to the famous German windows in a second, and closing the curtains and blinds during the day. In the US, however, it's very common for a place to have central air conditioning, which means that there's a thermostat somewhere and there will be these air vents that I mentioned in the intro, and through those the cold air will be blown into the different rooms. And in the winter it's simply hot air instead. So that's cool. The cooling system and the heating system at the same time, which also means that you won't see these things in the US a lot.
That is
in Germany, that's the
there
main
is
way
one.
of heating.
There is one. There.
you'll usually find these radiators in every room with an individual temperature control. I've seen a few of these in American homes as well, but as I said, when there's central AC with air vents, those are usually used for both heating and cooling. And places that don't have central AC often install these little window AC units. And I've mentioned a few times before that
maybe you know,
often
maybe I could try something like this, you know.
Install these little window AC units. And I've mentioned a few times before that Germans often think that Americans totally overdo the whole AC game and that it's often way too cold, and I'm going to make a whole video addressing this. But yes, Germans just aren't a big fan of having air blown into their rooms, while Americans seem to not be able to live without that. And that brings me to the next point, and that is ceiling fans. These are also pretty standard in the US, and I've never seen one in Germany, but I actually think they're awesome. Not every place
I would agree.
US has these, but a lot of places do. They're usually connected to the ceiling light with their own on and off switch, and they just help make the air circulate a little when it's hot. I love this especially for working out at home, and you don't have to have an extra fan in your room. Now, before we keep talking about the differences between homes, let's talk about what you can do at home for a second. And I think this year most of us have realized that that's quite a long list, and it's the same in Germany and the US, by the way. You can work from home, you can work out, you can teach from home, you can hang out with your friends via FaceTime, you can celebrate Easter via Zoom, you can have meetings from home, and so on. And you can also learn a lot of new skills at home, and that's why I'd like to introduce today's sponsor, Skillshare, really quickly.
If you need it, check it out over a link.
And now let's get to windows. The famous German windows are very different to the ones you'll find in America, because here all you can do is slide your window up and down, and they usually have a second slide thing that's a bug screen, but that's really all you can do. And honestly, opening these windows doesn't get a lot of air inside. Like, I often open up both windows in my rooms and there's still no air circulation really. German windows, on the other hand, are perfect for that. Germans are also pretty obsessed with Stoßlüften, but German windows are perfect.
My mom is, yeah. I mean, a little bit of lüften, a little bit of opening up there, because we don't have air conditioning, right? So basically our air just gets stuck in here, and you know, it gets less, you have less oxygen, everything gets a little bit weirder, everything gets a little bit more stinky, right? Everything gets just a little bit less fresh. So you have to do this once a day maybe, but there are people that do this literally every 2 hours, and that is just insane.
Because they usually have 3 different modes. You can open them like a door, which lets a lot of air in. You can tilt them like this, which also lets some air in, or you can close them. And they also usually come with a seal, just like the doors, but they don't come with a bug screen, which Americans like to complain about, but you can always install one. Like, I always had one in front of my window as a kid. What a lot of German windows do come with, though, are outdoor blinds or shutters. They're built into the wall, and you can close them from the inside like this. And not only do they darken the room almost entirely, but they also help with the insulation part. Super handy, in my opinion.
I mean, I don't have here one right now, but I have like things that you install inside, because otherwise I would not be able to sleep.
They're also electric, like this one in my room, but at some windows you'll also just find regular indoor blinds or curtains like you do in the US. This one is a pretty big one in everyday life. American homes usually have built-in closets in the bedrooms.
That is crazy. That is so crazy to me. I don't know, that's just crazy.
Some of them are walk-in closets, but the least you'll see is usually something like this. So you'll have a door that looks just like a normal room door, and then there's shelves and a clothing rack inside, and they're not taking up any space in your actual room usually because they're built into the wall. This is usually one of the most shocking realizations for Americans, but those are not a thing in Germany. Our bedrooms are usually just empty rooms when we move in.
Yeah, and you have like a cupboard, or I don't know how to say it in English. We call it in Germany, or in German, Schrank. It's a Schrank. You have just a Schrank in your room, you know, and there you put all of the clothes in.
Closet, so you'll have to buy a wardrobe. A lot of them are just standalone pieces of furniture in your room, but some people also invest in a built-in wardrobe that's fitted exactly into your room. I used to have one of those in my bedroom in Germany under the roof. This is a small one, but when walking through the house, you'll notice that light switches are different as well. In the US, most light switches look like this.
Yeah,
in Germany,
I know.
They're usually much
No, we have like pads that you can, like a pad that's like that, and then you can put it like this.
And are either one that you can tilt or that you can press. Also, doors in the US usually have door knobs throughout the house, while in Germany we mainly have door handles.
Yes.
Some places in the US do have handles as well, but when they do, the handles usually feel very different than the ones in Germany, so it's not the same handles.
Yeah, of course, outlets are different there. I don't know, I always think this guy here looks like just a terrified guy. Look, eye, and that is the mouth. That is terrified and screaming. Literally like that.
Okay, let's move into the bathroom. If you've seen my video about peeing differences, you know that I mentioned how different bathrooms are and that I'm going to dedicate a whole video to that topic. So I'll just mention a few things in this one. One big one is that in a lot of older homes in Germany, the bathroom light switch is on the outside of the bathroom.
Yeah, and that's
used to be a safety
so
regulation
annoying
in Germany back in the day, and you'll still see this a lot, but it's super annoying, really. Not only because you'll have to remember to switch the light,
but also like if your brother or something wants to put a prank on you, he can.
On before you go in, but also because people mess with you and turn the light off while you're inside. Now, inside the bathrooms, let's talk about showers for a second. In the US, most showers I've seen so far in homes, but also in hotels, and whether it's a bathtub with a shower or just a shower, have a fixed shower head. You can usually adjust the...
That's so weird. That's so weird. I mean, of course, we have them in Germany too, somewhere, but I love my, that you can here and then here and down there, and you always need to tilt your body weirdly in order to do this like from above, and if you want, you also can just plug it in and have it as a fixed one as well if you want. I mean, I think my brother is, at least I have the feeling he is like a guy that likes it more like this way, and I'm like a guy I like it more like this way,
angle a little, but you can't move it, which coming from Germany I find super annoying because you can't get water to all parts of the tub or shower, which especially sucks if you want to clean it. In Germany, we usually have a handheld shower head that's detachable, which I personally just think is much more practical because you can take the water wherever you need it basically, and if you don't want to get your hair wet, you can move it down quite a bit too. And then one other difference of many in the bathroom.
I think that is more a woman thing because I think we all men, whenever we shower, we also wash our hair. I think at least. I just like all of the men that I know do it at least that way. But of course, for women, that's probably also very important.
Is the toilets. American toilets, in a lot of cases, not every toilet, but a lot of them have a lot of water in the bowl, so it's very high, while in Germany it's usually really low. Some old German toilets also have a shelf like this in the toilet, which seems to be one of the most popular topics to talk about in the comments.
It's weird. Is it like, do you want to see what you did there? I don't know.
It's really not all that common anymore. And American toilets also usually have this old-fashioned toilet tank and a flushing lever like this. I've seen this even in pretty new homes. Well, in Germany, we oftentimes have a button to flush, and lots of toilets have a big and a small one, depending on how much water you need to flush. But also in modern German bathrooms, you often don't even see the toilet tank anymore because it's built into the wall and all you see is a push button in the wall to flush. One last difference in the bathroom that I want to mention in this video is that I feel like even in newer bathrooms in the US, you hardly ever see just one faucet handle to control the temperature at the sink. They're called Mischbatterie in German and are very common in Germany. But in the US, you usually have a separate hot water.
Oh, that's, and you always need to here a little bit more, here a little bit more. I mean, I had this lately, but it was so annoying. I don't know. I just, when here I always have to mix out. It was a little bit too far. That was not a little bit too far, and here it's, okay, a slight chunk more there. And, I don't have to do with two handles.
Cold water handle. So once again, it seems a little more old-fashioned than in Germany. Moving into the kitchen, one big difference is the fridge. American fridges are usually much bigger than German ones, just like a lot of things are bigger in the US. A lot of them have a water and ice dispenser like this, and oftentimes they have
You never see this in Germany. I mean, they're very likely guys that have it, but it's a very rich thing to do, I have the feeling, and I have never seen one in Germany actually.
Separate door for the freezer. Sometimes it's also just like a big thing on top of the fridge.
Yeah, that is like how we have it, or how I've always seen it. Either like in the fridge, another thing inside it, or you have it under the fridge.
German fridges usually don't have a dispenser like that. They're smaller, and the freezer is either a little part inside the fridge or it's underneath it, and it usually comes with drawers, which I've only seen a couple of times in the US. One thing that I find super handy in the US is the garbage disposal. A lot of kitchens have one, and it's like a grinder built into the sink.
That's cool.
I mean, I don't put waste in there on purpose, but if food leftovers have found their way into the drain...
That is very cool, because, you know, mostly when you maybe do something with vegetables or something just goes in there and you have to pick it out and, you know, it's already soggy. And, you know, then you have to put it... It's so disgusting, like the feeling on your hands. So this is actually quite nice.
It's clogging up. I do find it practical that you can just turn on the garbage disposal and the problem is solved. And one more thing I want to mention about kitchens is the stove. In Germany, most stoves are regular electric stoves or induction stoves nowadays, which do exist in the US, but a lot of stoves here are either electric coil stoves or gas stoves. That's actually the most common one I've seen around here, and you hardly ever see that in Germany unless the owner is like a really passionate cook or it's a really old house. So that's quite interesting. This one I just want to mention very briefly because in some German apartments you'll also find the washer in the kitchen, which is usually because there's no space anywhere else in the place. You'll also often find it in...
I mean, I have never seen it in the kitchen actually. Never ever in my life. So could be, but I have never seen it.
Bathroom, and especially in...
Bathroom, yes. Kitchen, no.
Apartments, there's oftentimes no dryer. That's because Germans mainly air dry their clothes.
I mean, we have a dryer, but for example, as a student, I never used the dryer, for example.
You'll definitely see drying racks like these in German homes. Bigger places usually do have a dryer, but we don't use that for our regular clothes a lot, so laundry rooms usually always have drying racks or a clothesline rope set up. When I first moved here for a longer period of time, I was really confused to find a washer and dryer in most places, but zero space to hang up my clothes. But Americans simply don't do that as much as we do in Germany. One difference that you'll notice when you walk through a German or an American home is the floors. In American homes, you'll see a lot of carpet, which I love personally, and in a lot of cases, it's this pretty thick, fluffy carpet too. You don't see that in German houses a lot. Most homes don't have carpet at all. Instead, we have tiles and wooden floors typically, but even when Americans have wooden floors, they're usually different than they are in Germany, where parquet is one of the most common floors, or the cheaper fake version laminate floor. In the US, the hardwood floors usually look a little different, like the structure is different and they're usually much darker than parquet floor, and from what I understand, they're also made differently. Overall, I found that Americans have a preference for darker wood in their floors and furniture.
Yeah, Germans love bright wood.
Well, Germans use lighter colored wood for a lot of that. And last but not least, let's talk about the exterior really quick. This varies a lot in Germany and the US, of course, but when it comes to apartments, one main difference is that in Germany, we always have our full name outside on the doorbell, the mailbox, and the actual apartment door, while in the US, it's usually just an apartment number, and that's part of your address.
By the way, not the full name, just the last name most of the times.
When it comes to houses, American houses often have the typical front yard and porch, and everything is very open, while in Germany, porches aren't really a thing, and we don't really have those big front yards either.
Yeah.
Instead, you'll see a lot of fences and hedges in Germany. Things typically aren't really open like they are in the US, and overall, we just have a lot less space in Germany, and especially in a lot of German cities, housing
you don't have space
and just space in general is pretty expensive, and people are glad to even have a balcony. A yard is really a dream come true, but then when they do have one, a lot of yards, especially in cities, are right next to the neighbor's yard. Just to give you an idea, in Munich, which is one of the most expensive cities in Germany, so keep that in mind. But in Munich, I can maybe buy a tiny studio apartment for the same price that I can buy a nice house here in Cincinnati with a yard and a porch and everything. Of course, it's like that in the big American cities as well, but the whole density thing and space as luxury is just a little more common in Germany.
And also you have to remember, Germans earn, especially also with the high taxes, way less than Americans. You know, our, I think, average salary is around like 38,000 euros. And then you have before taxes, and then after taxes, you probably have like, I don't know, or 40,000 euros, something like that. You have probably something like 15,000, 20,000 maybe left, something like that. You know, while I think in the US, like average salary is around like 60, 70,000, and you know, you also pay way less taxes, also like sales tax and all of that stuff. So trying to buy such a thing, or is you are rich, not rich, but you know, you are not wealthy, but you're doing good if you own a house.
Of course, there are many more differences that I could have mentioned here, so if there's anything important that I missed, feel free to share that in the comments below. And I'd also like to know which of these features you'd like to have in your house, or what.
Tell me this in the comments, and I hope you liked this video. And I hope I see you also next time. Until then, keep liking, subscribing, and bye! Thank you so much to Todd Phillips and all of the other patrons and channel members for your support. You're awesome.